Hi, I'm Paul Germain. Welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, typically we focus on different topics that would help you be a better boater. It could be anchoring, could be docking, man overboard, insurance, a whole variety of topics. But every now and then we take a detour and we look at interesting boats. They could be Coast Guard boats, they could be electric boats, hovercraft, or they could be antique and classic boats. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Today we're up at Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, and we've got some really interesting old and classic boats, which I think you're going to enjoy seeing and learning about. So let's get right into it. Well, Gary, this is an interesting old boat. It looks like another Chris craft. Can you tell us a little bit about this boat?
Yeah, this is really a special boat. It's a 1930 Chris craft, 24-foot triple cockpit. Only about 620 of these were made from 1928 to 1930.
Okay.
And of that, I believe there's less than 50 that are survivors.
Really? Wow.
This is an original boat. The planking on the outside, all the planking on the interior, all your instrumentation, everything we'll show you later is all original.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's unusual, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's been replaced is the topside decks, and that was because in 1930 they used steel screws. Oh. And of course steel screws would rust and they would stain the decking.
Right.
So that didn't look very good. So most of these decks have been boats like this. Most of these decks have been replaced, and this boat indeed has had its decks replaced.
Or it's pretty much all original. And were there different types of mahogany used on these boats?
This is all Philippine mahogany.
All Philippine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the stringers are mahogany as well.
So when you see a different color, it's due to the different stains put on the wood as opposed to different woods.
Yeah, and when we get closer, you'll see the different colors on the decking here. That's different stain.
Right, okay. Well, Gary, you know, as I look at the forward section of this towards the bow, so there's some interesting features that catch my eye. The first one is I don't know what you'd call it, maybe the bow strut in which the forward lines go through. That's an interesting feature in the way it attaches to what looks like the bow light.
Yeah, actually, the bow light was designed to be a tie down, and the line going straight off of the bow was because when in the old days they didn't have a lot of docks, and these were tied bow in.
Oh, okay.
And so that stabilized the boat.
Oh, well, that makes sense. So those are two very unusual features, right? The way that goes out and the way that you get that dual functionality from the light and a cleat, if you will, right? Yeah. And then you've got your lifting eyes there. Looks like you've got a hatch up front. Got some different stains in the mahoganies. Was that typical boats in that era? Did they kind of contrast the different colors?
Yeah, most all of the boats had the different contrasting colors. So this is a walnut stain, and then you have the Chris craft mahogany stain here. And as you mentioned, this is the lifting ring here.
Yes.
And that hatch there gives you access to all of your anchors and whatever you need to get from underneath the front deck.
All your nautical equipment.
Yeah.
How about this windshield? A very cool windshield here. It looks like it
it's a great
swivels.
Windshield. Yeah, it swivels. Yeah. You can open it right up and get all the air you ever want.
Nice.
Or close it right down and.
Nice. It reminds me of the old windshields and old cars of that era.
Yeah, this looks exactly like a 1930 or 1931 Ford. Phaeton windshield.
Yeah. So they say if it works for them, it should work for us, right?
Absolutely.
That's neat. Gary, I love to look at the cockpits of these old boats because they all are a little bit different, a little bit the same. This looks like a pretty old steering wheel on here. Yeah,
that's a 1930 Ford steering wheel.
Is that right?
That's the original wheel and all the original controls and original instrumentation as well.
Yeah, what do you have down here? You got tack, you got engine temperature, oil pressure, and charging.
Yep, gasoline and amps.
Was it unusual to have a gas gauge in these old boats?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
In fact, the other thing that's unusual is if you see a lot of the antique cars, they'll talk about a clum switch.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
This is a clum.
Okay.
And there it is right on the key, a clum. A clum. I protect that key. And it's a simple 1930 style automotive switch. You'll find them on Ford Model Ts and Model As.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And now, did you have to, is this original, everything we're looking at here original? And did you have to get it restored, kind of refurbished to make it work?
Everything you're looking at here is original. All of the instrumentation were restored.
Okay,
but
all right.
to original specs, and the faces are all original. Those were not restored.
Wow. Wow, it's in beautiful condition. And we got the shift down here. It's just a forward, reverse, neutral.
That's correct.
Little transmission. Now, how about the upholstery? Because these boats had a lot of upholstery to them. Were there any differences in the upholstery of the older boats?
Yeah, a lot of the boats, particularly this size and class boat, they just had a bench.
Right.
And you would have a cushion filled with kapok, which these are.
Okay.
Today it would be foam.
Yes.
What's unique on this boat is this was ordered from the factory with cushion. This is like a mattress. And this has springs underneath it. So not only does the boat ride smoothly through the water, but you've got a spring seat underneath you. It's really, really pleasurable to ride in.
Pretty luxurious.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Gary, you know, it's interesting on these old classic and antique wooden boats, especially the speedboats, of course, the engines, the power plants were the core of what was going on, core to performance and so on. What was this boat originally powered with, and what have you got going on now?
Well, this is really interesting. It was originally powered by a Chrysler marine engine flathead, and it put out a 95 horsepower. I wanted more horsepower.
Yeah.
I took that engine out and put it in my barn and set aside as the original equipment.
Okay.
And I wanted antique power, but I wanted modern power.
Yes.
And Chrysler, who had been building marine engines for a long time, in the 50s, when they came out with their Hemi, their infamous Hemi.
Hemi, yeah.
And this is a 1953 Chrysler Hemi marine engine.
Nice.
So it's very significant in marine engine history.
Yes.
And so I wanted to introduce that to this boat. It's a great balance of power, torque, and performs much better than the original equipment.
Yeah.
We modified the engine with a high-rise manifold with a single 4-barrel carburetor. It used to have 3 single carburetors, which are difficult to tune.
Right.
We put electronic ignition on it. We put Edelbrock manifolds on it. It runs just really sweet and pushes the boat effortlessly. At 2,000 RPM, the boat moves at 27 miles an hour. With the old engine, 27 was top speed. So they were working really hard.
So this is
in this case, it just lopes along and actually makes the ride much more enjoyable when the engine's not working hard.
I believe it. I believe it. Well, Gary, I would be surprised if this boat didn't have a special name and a story behind it like many other boats do. Is that true of this boat?
Oh, absolutely. This boat's name is Gosling, and it was originally delivered to Osborne Marine in Lake Sunapee, New Hampshire in April 1930.
Wow.
And if you're familiar with New Hampshire lakes, Lake Sunapee's mascot is the goose.
Okay.
And this boat here, the 24-footer, was considered the baby size. There was a 28 and a 26-foot, which were larger.
Okay.
And this was ordered from the factory with the name Gosling on it, and she's been named Gosling ever since she left the factory.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a story.
It is.
Well, Gary, this is just a really pretty boat. This is a very significant Chris craft, right?
Yeah, it's significant in many ways. It's a 1968 20-foot Grand Prix Chris craft, but it essentially is the end of the wooden boats for Chris craft.
Yeah.
There was a period just before this production where Chris craft moved all to plywood hulls. They were called the Cavalier line.
Okay.
And they went into this in 1968. They produced very few of them. There's only about 20 of these. In fact, this is one of the best examples in the entire country, and signifies the transition from wood into fiberglass.
Gary, you know, people buy boats today, and a lot of the things are standard. There's not as much customization as there might have been in the older days, and not so much personalization, if you will. And when I look at this forward deck here, one of the things I think is interesting is the bow light. It seems to have like almost wings coming out. What's going on with that?
Well, that wouldn't have been a personalization thing, but that was standard. What Chris Craft had that design for themselves, and the wings are to separate the field of light.
Okay.
There's a wing, there's a point in the bow, and then there's 2 side wings, and so you've got your port and your starboard lights, so that they don't get mixed, and you get a real strong signal.
Makes it very effective.
Yeah, it reflects it and it amplifies the quality of the light.
Yeah. And then we've got a horn over here. Would that have been standard on a boat like this, or that would have been an option?
That probably would have been an option, but that for sure is an original piece of equipment.
Okay, all right. And I noticed the decking's beautifully varnished, and here in the center, if you will, we've got a mixture of bleached wood and stained wood. What is that characteristic of this type of boat?
Yeah, in the 1950s more so. A lot of the Chris Craft Capris had a strip down the middle that was called blonde.
Yes, yes.
And it's very hard to maintain the blonde because it's light and stains. And yes, you can see on these there's a little bit of staining going on there that you don't see on the darker mahogany. But yes, this was something that they offered. Actually, what's interesting on this is one of the unusual boats that does have that, because they stopped doing that in the later models because it was so difficult.
Right, okay, all right. And the last thing that strikes me as something that's unusual, as this windshield, and you know, Chris Craft and Century were competitors, and this reminds me of a Century windshield.
You're absolutely correct. Century runabouts of this size in 66, 7, 65, 6, and 7 had a windshield just like this. Chris Craft always had a rounded windshield.
Yes,
I actually think it was a prettier design, but it's obvious Chris Craft wanted to borrow some ideas from Century, who were great designers of boats, and they were neck and neck in competition in this class of boat.
Yeah, that's a very sharp windshield. I really like that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Gary, is this boat represented the transition between wood and fiberglass, and at that time they were picking up heavily from automobiles, the cues from automobiles, and that steering wheel there looks like it came out of an automobile.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at some of the mid-60 Mustangs, I think you'll see something that looks very much like this. I'm not sure whether that's a Mustang wheel, but I will tell you it's inspired from the Mustang design.
Something close.
And if you look at the rest of the instrumentation, it starts to begin to look very automotive. Now these are Chris Craft instrumentation. Those are not automotive. But look at the dashboard here, and I'm sure you're familiar. And you're familiar with the popularity of the Chevy bow tie and the 55 Chevys. What this is, understand this is 10 or 12 years later, but they're picking up on those designs, those standards that they knew the people really liked, and introducing them into the boats.
Right. And the upholstery that we're sitting in here, this is what would you call this? It's got a groove between it. It's not tufted, maybe.
Well, it's not. Or? No, it's not. It's not. It's not tufted and sewn together. This is a printed material, which was very popular in that period of time, again with automobiles.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. It reminded me, it carried on that automotive theme through the upholstery.
As is the color. Think of the color of cars in those days. Great brights, and here's your great bright yellow interior on a boat. Fantastic. Matched up with a brown.
Color coordinated.
You haven't seen that before.
No.
All you've seen is green and dark blues.
Yeah, this is great. Gary, it's always interesting to see what's under the hatch on these older boats. And this is a pretty substantial engine. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, first of all, look at the size of the engine and the size of the boat. We barely have room to be sitting here.
That's right.
This boat is one of 32 that were made, and only 8 had this 427 300 horsepower engine. It's a monster, and this really signals what was going on in the boating industry. At the same time, the muscle cars that are resurging back in popularity today. And this was the heart and soul of this boat. It makes it fly. It's over 45-mile-an-hour boat.
Oh yeah, and I imagine you could tow multiple skiers on this sort of thing. It has plenty of torque, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is the original engine.
Yeah,
on this boat.
Everything on this boat, to my knowledge, is original. The bottom, 100%. This is a great survivor, not something that's been through an entire restoration. It was well cared for over the years, and boathouse kept, which is critical.
And that adds a lot to the value, right? The originality of the boat.
Yeah, if you've got original wood, original mechanics, that's great value. If you have original finish, then it really adds to the value. But to be honest with you, those aren't great user boats.
No.
It's much more fun to have a boat that you can go out and have fun and use.
I imagine this one is fun.
This one gets used, yes.
Well, Gary, this boat, like all the other ones I've looked at recently, has a name to it. Now, it's not your boat, but do you have any feeling for the background behind it?
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't get any notes on what the name was, so I can only guess. What I do know is that this boat was given to the owner by his parents for his 40th birthday.
Okay.
And while this may have been an original name, it's only my conjecture that perhaps they believe it's a heavenly experience, and I got to believe taking this boat out with that engine is something an out-of-earth experience.
I think you're right.
And I think that's probably an appropriate name for this boat, heavenly.
I agree with you completely. Gary, you know, when you look at old classic boats, antique and classic boats, the different companies have different positions in the industry. And right now we're on a Garwood replica, if that's the right word for it.
Correct.
And Garwood was known for being very high-speed boats, right?
Yeah, Garwood, who was the founder of Garwood Boats, was a speedboat racer. And Chris Craft built his boats. And he and Chris Smith were great friends. But at one point in time, he started to make his own boats. And so the Garwood Boat Company was born, and they have a long history. And this is a very special boat because it's now a replica of a 1937 Garwood 28-foot boat.
Okay. Yep. Yep. And this is a triple cockpit.
That's correct.
Yes. 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 So a replica. What is the difference between the original and the replica? Do you know?
Well, in this case, it's a true representation of what the 1937 was. They haven't changed the design in any way at all.
Okay.
But what they've done is they put all modern equipment in it, like a modern engine, a modern linkage.
Yes.
You don't have a straight bar, you have cables.
Yes.
So
How
what
about the
they've
bottoms? Did they make the bottoms of the hull construction? Does that differ a little
yeah,
bit?
in fact, yes, the answer is yes.
Yes.
But basically, most all of the antique boats have undergone a bottom change.
Sure.
These boats were built to last 10,
Right.
15 years,
Right,
and here we are. My boat's 85 years old,
Right.
and the bottom has to get replaced. They wear out at a certain time. So the replacement bottoms and this bottom is built in a cold mold epoxy,
Yes.
so it's watertight.
Yes.
And that's what's unique about this boat here too, is that it looks as a 1937 Garwood did, but it has all the modern techniques of manufacturing. The sides are cold molded, the decks are epoxied. So they're far more durable, and the maintenance of them is much lower than the old antique boats.
So it's easier to live, for some people it's easier to live with this type of boat than it is the original boat. This is a better fit for them.
Yes, it is, and one of the reasons that I like this, a lot of people don't like the fact that Garwoods are being reproduced in a reproduction, but what this does is it really perpetuates the popularity of wooden boats.
Yeah.
There's only so many old wooden boats you can restore. You're going to run out of them.
Right.
And once they get restored, they get kept like mine in the boathouse and get taken out on sunny days.
Right.
So now you've got a reusable, new purpose boat, and that will carry on the popularity of wooden boating for a long time into the future.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this boat, some of the detail on the boat. If we start from the bow and then we move our way back, one of the things they had was a technique of matching wood grain. What did they call that?
Well, they called it book matching.
Book matching.
And what that means is that the side planks of the boat, each plank as you go from your gunnel down to your stem, would be the same piece of wood cut and laid up on each side. And if you look closely at the bow on this boat, you'll see that the second plank down is just slightly darker.
Okay.
Wood has a natural color to it, and stain usually can blend it together, but you can't always hide it 100%.
Right.
And it thrilled me to see that the Garwood company today is producing boats with that fashion. You could have seen that in my 1930 Chris Craft.
Yes.
They're book matched, and in fact what's interesting is there was a boat that was built only 3 serial numbers after mine, has the same dark board as mine does, in the same location.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Hardware-wise, we've got an interesting bow chock up there on the bow. In contrast to some of the other ones that have a single line, this supports 2 lines. You've got a big flag stand there. Is that also a light? I can't really see it in front of the plane.
Yeah, the flag stand is a light, but the most unusual thing on this, and what I really like about the Garwood, is their windshield.
Okay.
This windshield folds down. You see, I don't want to do it here,
No.
but it folds down and fastens on the deck. So not like my boats or the others that you've seen today that open up from the bottom. This completely just goes flat.
Like an old car. A lot of the old cars do that.
And if you look at the windshield on the back, double windshield does the same thing. I love it.
Okay.
People, that's classic Garwood.
So that's how you tell a Garwood. That's
Yeah,
that's
you can
a
see. You
signature feature.
Well, along with the lines of the hull, but this is one sure giveaway that it's a Garwood.
Well, Gary, we're here in the cockpit of this Garwood, and the first thing that strikes me is this wooden wheel. Was there some sort of transition from wood to other materials back in the 30s somewhere?
Actually, I can't really speak authoritatively on this wheel, but what my knowledge is on the Chris Crafts, they produced a wooden wheel until mid-1930, and then they went with the automotive wheel.
Okay.
So I don't know if in 1937 if Garwood was making a wooden wheel, but this is a neat touch. If I was to build a reproduction and I could have a wooden wheel, I'd have the wooden wheel.
Right, and we've got the instrument panel here, and this is a reproduction of the original panel.
Yeah, that is an absolute reproduction of what the original panel is, and the Turcotte brothers that bought the Garwood brand and produced this boat went to the expense of doing the tooling so that they could have modern instruments that looked exactly like the old ones.
And how about the throttle? Where's the throttle on this?
Well, this is a throttle that you pull and you twist it It's really a fine tuning. It's aircrafts use that type of a throttle.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In fact, it is an aircraft style throttle.
Yeah, you don't see many of those these days.
No.
And this boat is nicely trimmed. On these Garwoods, most of the upholstery was leather, wasn't it?
A good percentage of them was leather. This boat has leather. This is classic Garwood, very plush.
Yes.
A true triple cockpit, no walk through.
Right.
You can see, like in the boat that I showed you earlier, the Gosling and the springs underneath it. You're sitting in a very, very comfortable seat here.
Yes, very nice.
This is a special boat.
This is nice. Well, Gary, you know, one of the nice features or aspects of these reproductions is they come with modern systems, whether it's electrical or plumbing, and most importantly, the power plant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the luxury. You can do what you want to with a reproduction in the engine compartment.
Yes.
Because you're certainly not going to put old power in it. And this boat here has a 454
Yeah.
GMC block engine.
Yeah.
It produces 350 horsepower. It's got electronic ignition. It has all of the modern technology to it.
Yes.
And what's really special is you can get mechanics to work on these where it's very hard to get on some of the older engines, like the Hemi that we looked at earlier.
Yep, yep.
I have to go far and wide to find the people to work on that engine.
Yep.
And in this case, any automotive mechanic is reasonably familiar with it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
the serviceability, this is a push the button go type of boat.
Bulletproof.
Yes.
Almost
Yes.
low to no maintenance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great combination, great weight to horsepower and torque ratio on the boat. This is well designed.
This is one of the reasons people buy this type of boat, right? They can put it
Precisely.
on the dock, take a nice cruise, put it away, not worry about it.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an interesting point. The antique and classic boats that people take to boat shows, if they have modern power in them, they lose points.
Yes.
And often people go to the shows just to see how good is my boat.
Right.
Well, instantly you're losing 10 points for modern power.
Yes.
In this case, you've got a replica boat, a reproduction boat,
Yes.
and it's authentic because that's what it is.
Right.
And so they can get a better score.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gary, you know, I find the old hardware on these older boats to be very cool. Just the shapes of the clamshell covers, and here's a fuel fill here. Very good construction on these, right? I mean, in terms of heavy duty, right?
Yeah, well, not only are they heavy duty, but these are also authentic to what they looked like in 1937.
Okay.
And they do function to a certain extent to ventilate the bilge.
Yeah.
But this modern boat, of course, has a bilge blower
Right,
to take the exhaust fumes out, as all antique boats would today.
Right.
But the original ventilation is on board. And this gas filler, yes, it's very unique.
Yeah.
But it's classic
Very heavy
Garwood.
duty. It's either brass
Classic
or
Garwood.
bronze
Yeah.
with chrome over it.
And so it's a reproduction, again, as the boat is, of the hardware.
Looks
To be
excellent.
authentic Garwood.
Looks excellent. And we got a nice varnished deck here. So as we move back towards the transom, again, like most other boats of this type, it has a name.
Yeah.
Well, what's the tie-in with the boat?
You gotta love the name on this boat. It's a reproduction, second edition.
Second edition.
It's a second edition 1937 Garwood. Couldn't have a better name for
Fits
it.
it to a T.
Yeah, absolutely.